Hey everybody, it's Dave here and Darren over there, and we're your two old bloggers. Over 2 decades each of talking publicly, blogging on your Minnesota Vikings. And here today, we are looking at the fact that the Vikings have their preseason, the training camp, started in full swing. It is ramping up. We're seeing more and more stuff come out from our favorite beat writers as to what actually is happening. And we have some actual battles going on. It's good to see some of the rookies competing. We'll get into that. Followed by the biggest news, controversial news of the week was that Kwesi adofo-mensah, our GM, the one we want to absolutely love and adore, because he can find talent everywhere, taking that financial nerdist, numbers type background and generating hopefully superstar players, said something in a USA Today interview that has people going, was he a little too candid? We'll find out. Followed by another disappointment. Yes, we're Vikings fans. We should be used to it. But darn it, Jim Marshall should make the Hall of Fame. And the Hall of Fame Seniors Committee snubbed him once again. And then we'll end up with a congratulations. So, get ready to watch Two Old Bloggers. Climb in the Pocket, Daily Norseman, and Lake Monster Brewing presents Two Old Bloggers. Hey everybody, it's Dave here, Darren over there again. I'm down in hot Central Texas. Darren's up in the frigid north, up there, close to the Arctic Circle in Yellowknife, Canada. How are things up there, Darren?
It was beautiful this morning, a little rainy today, but temperatures are fine, around 20, 21 degrees Celsius, quite comfortable for us.
So nice.
Quite comfortable. Not like it's probably hot as Hades in
yeah,
Austin
we're
today.
in over 40 Celsius range, to put it in your language, down here.
Yes. But yeah, we're good and just chomping at the bit to talk Vikings as usual.
Hey, it's a great topic. Absolutely fabulous topic. And let's get this thing started.
Get it rolling. Yeah.
And we'll start out, as always, with the first theme. Chris Cook. What does Chris Cook have to do with anything?
We'll find out. We'll get into it in a little bit.
Well, it is the start of training camp. We have seen some good things so far. We want to thank all our beat writers, that have provided us with some wonderful insight. And that's the slide I'm missing. Let me throw that puppy up there. I knew I was missing something. Our favorite beat writers, local beat writers, not national, come from basically these handful of organizations. Score North, The Athletic, Star Tribune, Sports Illustrated, Pioneer Press, Purple Insider, and K-Fan.
They're on the beat, on the scene daily at training camp. As all Vikings fans would know by now, the Vikings training camp kicked off on Tuesday. And so all of this off season about wondering, well, who's going to do what, who's going to show, what are the rookies going to look like? We start to finally get some answers about that, and even a little bit of insight into the depth chart. Who's running with the ones? Who's right now backups? Who's forgotten about? And the beat writers, whether it's Will Raggets from Sports Illustrated, Tom Pelissero from USA Today. You got Matthew Collar from Purple Insider, all those guys, and Kevin Seifert, blah 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 blah. So they've been coming out with giving us a little bit of an insight on what's going on in training camp for those of us like myself who aren't there, cannot see it, and we're starting to learn a few things. Particularly, I'm anxious to see, okay, where do the rookies slot in here, David? Do any of them got a shot at a starting position? There's some that do. We've talked about that. Where do the other guys that we don't think have shots at the starters? Are they going to make the team? Are they going to be backups? How's it all going to work? What we have been finding out just initially is that the three rookies that I think most of us agree have a shot, are either the favorite to be a starter or have a shot to be a starter. Lewis Cine, of course, at safety, Andrew Booth Jr., the cornerback, and then Ed Ingram at right guard. All of them right now are running with the twos. Yesterday, for some, that would be a little bit of a surprise with Lewis Cine, because before training camp, the expectation was that he was already anointed the starter over Cameron Bynum. That has not been the case so far. Bynum is running with the ones. Cine is running from the twos. It remains to be seen how long that will last. But at least for the first week of training camp, that's been the case. Ed Ingram has been, yesterday, he got to split time with Chris Reed at starter reps. People may have saw that tweet at right guard, but that was because Jesse Davis was out with an injury. So right now, Davis is still running with the ones at right guard. And then Andrew Booth Jr. is he's running with the twos as well.
And however, trying to impress and doing a good job so far.
Is he ever, from what we've been reading? So a few interesting things when it was from the observations from these beat writers, particularly, I think, on the offensive line. As expected, not a whole. I think the starting five is pretty much what we've talked about earlier. Running with the ones, Darrisaw, O'Neill at tackle, Cleveland and Jesse Davis at the guards, and then Bradbury at center. The backups, though, had Oliudo and Blake Brandel as the tackles, and then you had Schlottman as the backup center, and then you had Ingram and Chris Reed at the guard position. So that's a little bit of an insight there, I think, into how the depth chart is shaking out at offensive line, and that's one of our.
Do you know the third line?
I do not. But I know that Wyatt Davis is there.
The third line, your tackles are Lowe and Paris. Is that his name? Mm-hmm. Yes, Timon Paris.
Timon Paris, yeah.
And you have Hinton and Wyatt Davis, was actually seen on the field with the third line. And you have Sokol as your center. And Sokol is an interesting prospect. Whether he makes the 53 or not, I don't know. But he very well may be in running to be developed as the next center for your Minnesota Vikings. He's a young kid with lots of promise, and hopefully they can develop him to take next year, take that step. So that's your third line. Like I said, Ed Ingram is been second line consistently. He split reps yesterday with Reed when Jesse Davis was out. But it's going to be fun once they put on pads, which comes Monday, and they start hitting to see where these guys actually move and rack and stack, because I can't wait for that. That's going to be fun.
And the Chris Reed situation for me, and I think for you, David, bears watching, because we liked that signing initially when it was made. We thought, hey, he could be the starting right guard for this team, because he had been on the Colts offensive line. That offensive line almost had Mr. Wisconsin
That's right,
guy.
Thomas.
Had Mr. Wisconsin guy almost ran for 2,000 yards with that line blocking for him, and Chris Reed was one of the guys on that. Interesting that we were wondering, okay, is he going to be the challenging Bradbury for center? Looks like they got him at the guard position right now, and I think that preseason, I'm looking forward to Reed really showing something, and either him or Ingram, and unseating Jesse Davis for the right guard. I don't know if that's going to happen, but the fact that they got Reed and Ingram splitting reps yesterday at right guard when Davis was out means that I think that they see Reed as a guy they can switch
Right.
around on the inside, move
Play
him
all
left, move
three
him
interior
right,
positions.
play
Yeah.
all three interior positions, and that's got to be extremely, extremely valuable to the Vikings to have one guy who can do that. So I think Chris Reed's going to play a lot, even if he isn't a starter. And the backups stuff was, you're talking about Sokol. He came from a very small school, Sacred Heart or something like that. So he needs a lot of seasoning, I think. But Austin Slotman, the backup center right now, he's not really doesn't really have an impressive previous resume. I think that he's a guy, like you say, him losing that backup center position, he's ripe for the picking in that, and maybe Sokol can sneak in there. Who's somebody who I thought last week when I talked about the roster situation, there was no way he was going to make the team. He would be a practice squad candidate, and that may still happen. But hey, that's what the preseason's for these guys to show the coaches that they deserve to be higher up in the depth chart than we think they deserve to be.
That's right.
And number 23, Andrew Booth, lots of talk on him throughout the week, especially the first 2 days, like words being used like fluid, physical, cocky, very he has no shortage of confidence, and he intercepted a Kirk Cousins pass that was underthrown, a few pass defenses. So he has really shown, been impressive from what we were reading the first week, the first few days of training camp. And again, I had Patrick Peterson and Cam Dantzler as the guy starting on the outside. I still think that's the case, but if Booth keeps playing like this, if he shows during the preseason exhibition games, if he's as impressive as he's looked the first 2 or 3 days in camp, that could very well change. David, I think that's a great thing if Booth turns out to be great, because it seems like we haven't had we haven't even had one corner who I'd say was like above average since 2017 in Xavier Rhodes.
Mm-hmm.
So for us to have Booth potentially being that, Cam Dantzler, I think, has also looked. There's been reports from the beat writers saying he's looked very good so far. Mm-hmm. And then Peterson's a guy, again, I think his best days are behind him, but he's experienced. Even last year when we didn't think he was that good, teams didn't really throw at him very much. Right. So he still has respect. I think, could it be that the Vikings secondary could have like 3 above average starters?
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Earlier in the week, we talked about the beat writers talking. Matthew Collar had on a draft expert that specifically focuses on defensive backs. And he talked about Andrew Booth. And he says Andrew Booth, out of all the corners that we have, has the more ability with his feet and his capability to flip his hips and do all the things necessary to play nickel than anybody else on the team. And that's sort of what made me go,
Yeah.
I wonder if Ed Donatel will eventually say, hey, I got 3 good corners, like we just said. Let's try him at nickel. But speaking of 3 good corners, and we talk about the nickel position, today I saw on Twitter, because fans are now in the stands at Egan, they had all 3 safeties out on the field at the same time. Hitman Harrison Smith, you had Cameron Bynum, and Andrew Seen out there on the field all at once, which I can't wait to see either.
Yeah, and I haven't heard any reference to Chandon Sullivan yet in anything I've read either.
So I hear he's doing okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Right
uh,
now, he's the number one nickel.
yeah. But uh, right now, David, none of the three rookies,
Mm-hmm.
they're not being given anything. They're not, they haven't, the coaching staff has been very careful, it looks like, to not give any of them the starter and say, you got it, buddy, run with it. They're making them, at least for the time being, earn it. And I think that's good. I remember, and we had the Chris Cook visual up at the
Uh
beginning
huh.
of this, and the reason why is, I'm going to talk about it now, is that this seems like ancient history, but I remember in 2010, Cook was our first, our top draft pick, picked in the first pick in the second round. I believe we traded out of the first round, and he had from what I remember, he had a phenomenal training camp.
Mm-hmm.
He was the talk of the 2010 training camp. That he was going to be the next great Vikings corner. And then, of course, when the lights went on and the play was actually for real, he stunk it up. And that's just a lesson that, okay, yeah, it's great for Andrew Booth to show and flash when there's no pads on and they're
Right.
running in t-shirts and shorts, but that doesn't mean anything until let's see him do it when there's actual games, preseason games, and then in the regular season games. I mean, I'm very confident that Booth is going to be a very good player for us, but just because he's had two or three strong practices in training camp does not mean that he's going to be that kind of player in the regular season for us. Sure, hope so, but this is why these guys have to earn it,
Mm-hmm.
and they've got to
Well,
beat out veterans who've been there, done that, and you kind of know
even
what
the
to
great
expect.
Randy Moss took a while.
That's right. He was not made the starter in the regular season or until, I don't know, a few games in,
Mm-hmm.
until it was undeniable that he had to start over Jake Reed. But I'm sure that he had to earn it too. So Andrew Booth, Lewis Seen, Ed Ingram, they are going to have to do the same.
And in other talk, the fourth rookie off the board, Brian Asamoah, got some time this week with the ones. Also, as Jordan Hicks was missing a couple days for non-COVID related illness, and he and Troy Dye, you wanted to mention Troy Dye, had split
I
some
did.
reps.
Yes, it was, and Dye had been took the full reps the first day when Hicks was not in there, and then he and Asamoah traded off after that. But again, I had Dye last week. I thought Dye was not a great candidate.
Short
Probably was
for
not
this
going to.
team. Yeah.
Yeah, it probably was not going to make the team. But at least what we're looking at right now, even if he's either the top backup for Hicks or close to it, in that case, if he's getting all the reps for a banged up Hicks, or he's getting half of the first reps, we know Asamoah is going to be on the team. I
Right.
think that's a given. But Troy Dye, didn't think so. But it looks like Dye, unless he totally screws up in training, the rest of training camp and in preseason, he will be sticking with the team. And we know he has special teams value because he's played a lot of
Mm-hmm.
special teams the first 2 years. So maybe he may be sort of a lock to make the Vikings, even though yet last week I kind of felt like he was iffy. Probably doesn't say much for Chaz Surratt's chances to make the
Nope.
Vikings. I keep on bringing up Surratt. I don't know why I talk about him so much, considering he's done nothing for the Vikings, but just a guy that had a great college resume, and you kind of thought like
He could be.
interesting
Yeah.
interesting type of build for a linebacker, interesting background, former quarterback turns linebacker, and so far he's just like Wyatt Davis. He's just been a nothing, a big disappointment.
Well, I think he's got more play than Wyatt Davis, however, at least on
Yes, yeah,
special teams. Um, Also doing well in camp is this fine gentleman.
yes. There was one report talking about how I can't remember who the beat writer was, but talking about how Cook looked faster in training camp than he did in 20 than last year, which I think is great news for the Vikings, great news for Kevin O'Connell and the new and Wes Phillips and the new offense that they're installing, and extremely bad news for the Vikings opponents, because if Dalvin Cook is faster than he was last year, and he looked pretty fast to me last year, even though he was, we knew that he was hurt, and he
Right,
had
he wasn't
numer-
100%.
He wasn't 100% probably most of the year. But if you got Dalvin Cook in beast mode 2020, Dalvin Cook playing in this new offense, that is a huge, huge plus for the Minnesota Vikings, and it's going to really, really help them uh, win more games than they have the previous 2 years. I am stoked to see Dalvin Cook running faster than, or just as fast as he's ever run, and a healthy Cook too. Just that's really encouraging news to hear that he looks as sharp as he does.
And take that, first off, he's at the age 26, 27, which is absolutely the prime for a running back.
Yeah.
Two, the Vikings have already stated they're going to go to pass first, a pass-oriented game versus, like I've joked before, the 95 run-first offense. Which means defenses, since they know they're going pass-oriented, are going to be focusing on the pass more. That, in conjunction, is going to make the runs by Dalvin Cook all that more surprising, less anticipated, an improved offensive line in a different scheme, the mid zone versus a wide zone, with a little bit more power up the middle, hopefully opens up more holes. Boom, boom, boom. He takes it to the house, which he has the ability to do. And Kirk Cousins is whining because he didn't get to throw a touchdown on that drive.
Yeah, I am. And Dave, you and I don't care who gets the touchdown.
I don't care.
Vikings,
as long as they score.
As long
35
as
points a game, baby. Let's run up that. I want a 50 burger this year.
And Dalvin Cook had a lot of touchdowns in 2022.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Brian, spelling Cook, that's always something that I think we always talked about. We think is ideal because, of course, he's never played a full 16-game season, and he has shown a tendency to get banged up. Most running backs do. They take a tremendous amount of punishment, but it would be good to spell him. We'll see how Kevin O'Connell and Wes Phillips will approach that. I've always said it seems great in theory till you get in a close game and you're like, are you going to take Dalvin Cook out of a close game in the third and fourth quarter for put in Alexander Madison or somebody else who's not as good? And no, you're not going to do that. You need Dalvin Cook in the game to make plays. But at some point in time, it would be nice if the Vikings are able to come up with a way to spell him a bit more than they have been able to do in previous seasons and take some of the mileage off of him.
Mm-hmm. Nick, I want to score 35 points no matter what, but I disagree with you thinking the defense will be bad. I think they are actually going to improve over what we saw last season. How long it takes, we can debate that. I don't think it's going to take as long as we think. Ed Donatel, one of the reports this week, talked about how a lot of the vets have been running the same system, the Mike Zimmer's system, and that Mike Zimmer was an outstanding defensive coach. And they're making the transition and talking the changes in language is what works, what doesn't. And Ed Donatel's morphing a little bit, taking a little bit of that as well, the best parts, and then the best parts of what the Donatel defense is going to be, which they've taught for a few years, and they're going to morph that together. And I think we're going to see something that is absolutely special. And it's going to, may not show up in the first week, but I think by the end of the season, we're going to be quite happy about it. And it's going to complement that offense.
A couple of questions, Dave, about do we see what do we think about Ty Chandler, the 5th round pick out of North Carolina, his chances of making the team on a Vikings running back unit where Cook's making the team. Madison's been his backup the past 3 years. You got Wang Chung, who's making the team just on kickoff return alone. And then, who's are they going to keep for like a CJ Ham on the team? We talked about it last week. I think Chandler, I should have done my adding and subtracting because you only have 53 roster spots, right. So you can't keep 10 running backs. But I do think that
25 offense, 25 defense.
Yeah, I guess you could keep 10 running backs if you wanted, but that would leave you short in some other areas. I think Chandler does make the team, and there's there has been some speculation here. It's not based on anything, but people say, I think Madison is going to get traded. And I don't see that happening because of his experience. The Vikings know what he can do. Um, Now, if Chandler or Wang Chung were so impressive in preseason that the Vikings coaches were very, 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 very confident that if Cook gets hurt, and he usually does, and they got to put somebody else in, and that somebody else is Ty Chandler or Kene Nwangu, and they're very, very confident that they can give just as good or better than Madison, then yeah, I could see Madison getting traded for like a 6th or 7th rounder if they could get it.
Well,
But
we talk about the beat writers. There was scuttlebutt this week about just that. Seattle had, trying to remember who it was.
Chris Carson retired.
Right, retired. And they were like, oh shit. Now, they do have some decent running backs on their roster. But there was talk of, well, they have an opening. Would they be willing to trade for Madison? Madison might be the perfect style of running back that they would want. We're not going to find out. Probably it's going to get closer to the end of the preseason because teams will wait. Teams will go, yeah, I may want Madison, but if I know you're going to get rid of him, I'll just wait until you release him, and then I'll pick him up that way versus trading for him and giving you, a 3rd round or a 4th round conditional or whatever it is, a 5th rounder. And we'll be...
Yeah, and
6th or 7th, Aaron says. Yeah, it could be. You're talking about a backup back. So,
yeah, I don't think Aaron was very pleased with my thinking on our compensation, our return on compensation for Madison, like a 6th or 7th to keep him. Sure, he could keep him, but he's a free agent next year, and the Vikings probably aren't going to keep him. He's going to walk. So try to get something for him now if you're not going to use him, I would say. If you are going to use him, then you keep him. But it's going to have to be – I don't think you get very much for Alexander Madison, a guy who's been a backup his whole career and is not considered like a home run threat running back. I think a lot of teams would like to have an Alexander Madison, but what they're willing to give up for him, I think, would be very, very, very low.
Yeah, if you get any draft choices, I think you're on the plus side. Because, like I said, I think they'll wait to see if the Vikings just release him because they have Kene Nwangu and Ty Chandler. And most likely keeping C.J. Ham, which fills out your backfield. Done.
Yeah. But these answers will be revealed in like 3 or 4 weeks, David.
That's right. That's right. And we have football this week on Thursday, the Hall of Fame game. And but we'll get talking about the Hall of Fame momentarily. On to theme 2.
Vikings. This is a good one, David. I'm looking forward to talking about this one.
All right. This one is the controversial one. Kwesi adofo-mensah met this week with USA Today, and I'm trying to remember who it was. Jordy Epstein, something like that.
It wasn't Pelissero, anyway.
No. It was Jody Epstein, I think was her name. Yeah. Something like that. Did the interview. Let's see. Do I still have it up on here? No. I closed the window. Anyways, she interviewed Kwesi about this upcoming season, and Kwesi was honest and candid. The question is, was he too honest and candid?
Yes, well, I'm Nick. I'm not drinking anything alcoholic, just a old slushy Slurpee. So Coca-Cola, though, good American company. But yes, I imagine most everybody would who follows the Vikings would have heard about this. Kwesi adofo-mensah, as you say, interviewed by USA Today. Story came out and some interesting comments about our starting quarterback in there, where Kwesi adofo-mensah said was quoted as saying, Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback, but we do not have. But he's not. We don't have Patrick Mahomes, and we don't have Tom Brady here. And Kwesi adofo-mensah also said that it's unlikely you're going to win a Super Bowl without an elite quarterback like Mahomes or Brady. And of course, that caught a lot of people's attention because Kwesi Wrong had extended Kirk Cousins, brought him back when a lot of people didn't think that we should, and he's paid him, a significant amount of money to come back and quarterback for us. And so when you talk about that way about the guy who is going to be your starting quarterback in your first year as a general manager with a new head coach, that's going to raise some eyebrows. Um, and Cousins was, of course, asked about it the next day. He gave a very, well, I'm not really not too concerned about it. I'm really focused on training camp and all the things that are going on there. And that's the kind of answer I would expect Kirk Cousins to provide us. He did that. I think that, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah admitted, he tried to clarify his comments after that and admitted that, well, maybe I went somewhere that I shouldn't have gone. What my words were kind of taken out of context. People always say that, but when you say your quarterback is a good quarterback, the context is there, David.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah said, at least in my view, is 100% correct. Kirk Cousins is not an elite quarterback. He's a very good quarterback, and that's just the facts. Mm-hmm. But I think that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, if he had to do it over again, and he will have to do it over again in numerous interviews, probably shouldn't have phrased it that way. It's just kind of we've had the way we've had the whole off season has been like this is really the first kind of crack in the whole collaboration, everything is awesome vibe that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell have been trying to build with the Vikings since they got hired. And this is really the first bit of controversy they've run into. And I think that, I think David, I don't know Kirk Cousins personally, of course. I think that's pretty clear. You don't either. But I think we both feel that he's a guy that doesn't really always take constructive criticism as well as a guy in his position probably should. Everybody's different. Everybody's got different personalities. But when you're a quarterback, the top position in football, a lot of the stuff has to roll off your back, I think, and you just have to move on and trust your abilities. I don't think that Kirk Cousins mentally is that kind of a guy. David, I know you're just want to chime in on this, so please do.
Well, when you're one of the top 15 players in your position in the world, you hope that you can take this as a motivational type comment and saying, well, I'll show you. However, I don't think Kirk Cousins believes that way. I think he internalizes it with his, slough off. And it may not mean anything. Yes, it's obvious Kirk Cousins is not Hall of Fame bound Tom Brady and future Hall of Fame bound Pat Mahomes. But Kwesi is 100% correct when he says having those guys makes it easier and more likely to get to and win a Super Bowl than it does any other. The problem with having those guys is they don't come around that often. It is a tree that produces, elite fruit, that perfect stuff, the stuff that makes that wonderful whiskey that sells for $1 million a barrel, right? It doesn't happen that often. And to find that, it is difficult. Now, the whole idea about the interview was when it comes to rebuilding a squad, rebuilding your team, do you tear it all down? If you tear it all down, what's the most critical position? The most critical position always is quarterback. You start to worry the most, do I have a good quarterback? Yes, I have a good quarterback. Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. Is he an elite quarterback? No, he has not proven to be that up until this point. Do I hope that Kevin O'Connell can bring that out of him? Oh, hell yes, I hope that's the case. Because I think he has the physical talents to do such. But he's not there. You hope that with something like this is the type of and it comes to learning personality. What motivates somebody? Hopefully this is that little spur, that little poke that says, you need to be better. I'm telling the world, you aren't Tom Brady. You aren't Patrick Mahomes. But I believe in you and that you can be. You got to take this and change it and do it. Will he? That's a different story. From what I've seen of Kirk Cousins, my feelings about Kirk Cousins before he even joined the Vikings, is that he internalizes that thing and sort of shuts down. I think that's part of his own mental makeup. I hope I'm wrong this year. I hope he takes it and just explodes.
David, I agree with that, and I think that Cousins' comments when he was asked about it again, he was like, training camp, blah blah blah. I'm not too concerned about it, but that's something I would expect him to say. Kirk Cousins is not a guy to rock the boat very much. We haven't seen much of that. He's not a guy we've heard he's a people pleaser. I don't think he's going to say anything ever say anything controversial, and he didn't in this case. But it's easy hindsight. He had a whole day to think about. He knew he was going to get asked about this, so he had time to think about it. He probably worked with the Hagen, the PR guy from the Vikings, on how he was going to answer it and message it and all that. But I would have preferred him to say,
answer.
Yeah, I would have preferred him to say, listen, I understand what Kwesi said. I feel that I don't have any problem with what he said. My record shows that, my stats show I am a good quarterback, but I'm going to, my goal is to be elite. I'm going to take what my GM said is motivation to get us to the next step. And so my whole focus in training camp and in the regular season is to be a Tom Brady or Pat Mahomes and get the Vikings to a Super Bowl. That's what I would have liked him to say, and maybe show a little bit of that. He was maybe even a little bit pissed off that his GM said he was a good quarterback, but he didn't do that. He's got his reasons. And I don't think team-wise internally this is going to be a big deal. It's a 1 week news cycle, probably the last. We're keeping it alive a little bit by talking about it here, I guess. But this isn't going to divide the team or anything like that. No. But I would like it if it does nothing else. I would like to see it motivate Kirk Cousins to do whatever he can to leave no stone unturned on trying to get to the elite level, because even if he isn't Pat Mahomes or Tom Brady, if he's better than the Kirk Cousins he's been the previous 10 seasons in the league, who knows what difference that could make in the Vikings' fortunes. Like a better Kirk Cousins than what we've seen would be pretty damn good.
Exactly. I mentioned Aaron had a good answer. His answer was paralysis by analysis. Yes, that seems to hold him back. Hopefully, like we've talked about before, Kevin O'Connell becomes his brain, and Kirk Cousins has the physical talents that Kevin never had, and like you said, takes that next step. We shall see. I hope he does.
I wanted to mention one last thing about this, David, and I think it's been the point, something that happened in training camp the past couple of days. You mentioned it. I've seen it written about how, and it's that paralysis by analysis thing with Cousins. I think there was one play where he went through his progressions, checked down, and O'Connell stopped the practice and told Cousins, "No, I want you to try to get it in there. Don't go through your progressions here. Trust your receiver. Throw it." Throw it in there. Try to make a play instead of checking down. And I think that was good to hear that O'Connell is kind of telling him, "Hey, man, sometimes if you see an opportunity, instead of saying, option 1A is not quite 100% open, I must move to option 1B. Oh, option 1B is not 100% open, I must move to option 1C."
Option 1C isn't quite open. Where's CJ Ham?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, for the 2-yard check down when you need 15 yards.
Well, and speaking of our favorite beat writers, Matthew Collar did a research project on that. I believe it was Matthew Collar. It may have been Boys Skull North. We always get the impression that he checked down on 3rd and long to C.J. Ham. Actually, he only did that a couple times. All last season.
Yeah.
However, on 2nd and long, he did it prolifically. It was like over close to 24 times he did it. And that's where we get that. So they looked up the numbers, and I may be off, give or take a few, but they are literally that. Hopefully Kevin O'Connell gets into his brain. No. Justin Jefferson may look to be covered right now, but he is in a position to beat him. Throw that ball. By the time it gets there, he will be one step ahead. He will catch it. He will go for the distance. Touchdown. We're on our way to 35 to 50 points a game. That's what he's got to get
That's
into.
right. Yeah. And some of those plays you'll make a mistake and it might get picked off or something. But
yeah, but if you're still pressing and you're scoring 35 to 50 plays a game, the occasional interception is, oh well, right? Yeah. We didn't score 50. We only scored 42 today. Okay, I'm cool with it. Yeah, go for it, baby. Go for it. Now, Nick Howard brings up maybe Kirk should have gone to Florida and with his receivers. I am sure Tyler Fornes, that will be talked about probably tomorrow. That story came out this week. And that got blown up for those that believe in the out of proportion that Kirk Cousins was asked to come down and throw with Justin Jefferson, and I believe Osborne was down there, and maybe some of the other ones throw around with his receivers. He chose not to. He wanted to spend time with his family. Now, how you view that depends on who you are. Is that a leadership thing? One of his faults that he's not willing to do what's necessary to make the team go? Or is it, hey, it's no big deal, he wants to spend time with family? You can understand that. It generally comes down to what type of personality you are. I think he's more type B than type A, which is unusual for somebody to get this good with those type of personalities, or a type B versus an A. But everything you've seen about teams that win the Super Bowl and get there, they talk about sacrifice and how much it took to get there. Is that a lack of sacrifice? He could have brought the family along, right? Mm-hmm. Thrown a football around for 6 hours a day and then gone off to Disney World, right? Gone off and, nerded out at Epcot Center or the Star Wars deal or whatever he wanted to do. But no, that wasn't his choice. I tend to believe, me growing up in the military, right? I sacrificed a lot. I believed in training and making sure all my guys were right, beefing them up, getting them as good as they could be, right? Training them to do my job, training them to do others' jobs, training them to be experts at their jobs, so that when it came to the necessary that we needed it, when all the chips counted, and that happened in the Gulf War, it happened in Afghanistan, it happened in Iraq, it happened with me within Panama. If you want to go back even further, Grenada, you have to be able to trust the people you're going with, and you want them as qualified and as trained as possible, and you sacrifice time away from your family. And yes, trust me, you do. You're gone from the house 200 plus days a year. That hurts. I understand that. Some men don't like that. There's nothing wrong with that. I fully understand. You want to love your family. You want to be the best dad ever. I got that. I wish I was better. But I also wish the guys I was with that we were the best, so that we had the best survivable ability to survive and inflict and win any competition or any conflict that we were in. I view football as much the same way. If you want to sacrifice to get to that ultimate goal, and that ultimate goal is to you win with your team the big prize, that does take some sacrifice. I'm sorry. If you believe it doesn't, I'm sorry. That we disagree. It does take that effort. And normally these are guys that wake up at ODARC 30 and go out and run and lift weights and try to be better than everybody else. They do this from, Pop Warner on, junior high, high school, right? These are the guys putting in the extra work. If they're lucky enough to get beyond high school and play college, they're putting it there. And if they're lucky enough to get drafted in the NFL, they're still doing that extra work, right? Because they want to be the best. Hey, but he's spending time with his family. And there's times when you need to take time off and just, reset. And maybe that's it. So, Drew, I never made it to Grenada. However, I was on the flight line ready to load up and go. I was recalled out of the military school, college I went to go up as a cadet with my military unit. I was simultaneous membership program in the Army Reserves at the time, 11 bang bang, and never did go, but I was ready. But I've been involved in just about every conflict since. El Dorado Canyon. Anyways. That's just my opinion. Now, whether he can become that, I hope so. I hope it all works. Really, I do. I want the Vikings to win one before I die. So,
hey, yeah.
That brings us to our favorite part of the show. Beer. Lake Monster Brewery, we're partnered with them. We started last spring. We're continuing that through the fall. Matt Lang, who's the brewmeister there, is a great guy. Been talking to him about some of the weirder things they can make. Asked him about, have they ever made beer with wild rice? Those in Minnesota know wild rice. Go up to Leech Lake. That's where I saw it the first time. We're taking our boat out, and there's natural wild rice growing. And you'd hit it, and the rice grains would fall. It was towards the end of the season, would fall into the boat. I said, have you ever done it? Because, beer or wild rice is a grain, and you make beer with grain, right? You make hard alcohol with grain as well. Grain is a wonderful thing, whether it be wheat, corn, wild rice, malt, stuff like that. It is absolutely wonderful. And they have. However, what they have on tap right now, they've added Purple Rain, right?
Ooh.
That type of season. We have still the light, refreshing ones. Belgian Session Pale Ale. We have our strawberry rhubarb still. We have our Pog Sour. And then those that like it more stout. I shouldn't say stout. It's not a stout. Like it more meaty. You have Rare Species 3.0. I've had Rare Species 1.0 and 2.0. I have not had Rare Species 3.0. I bet that is great. Yeah, they need to deliver.
Yes,
I agree with you, Aaron. They do need to deliver. Nick's
on the Go National.
Yeah. And then in
International,
the pints,
baby. International.
International. And you can see they haven't changed what they've got right now presently in the pints, which means cans, and that's anywhere from a 12-ounce to a 20-ounce. And me being stationed in England, an Imperial pint over there is 20 ounces. I wish it was over here as well. That brings us to theme 3.
Sad emoji time.
Sad emoji time. This is stupid. The senior committee has reduced the list of finalists for the class of 2023 in the seniors category down to these individuals. And as you can see, there is a name missing.
There sure is, David. There sure is. We talked about this 3 weeks ago, I think, when Jim Marshall been announced. Yes, Nick, I'm with you 100% on that one. Purple Haze, boo. Yeah, you can say that again. We talked about Jim Marshall. He'd been one of the 24 semifinalists. Talked about his chances of getting to be a finalist. And at the time, I thought his chances weren't very good, not because he's not deserving, but just there were various reasons for that. We talked about them quite a bit. And turns out, unfortunately, that I was right. Jim Marshall did not make the cut as a finalist. And out of the finalists, Dave, only 4, I believe, get selected to the 3 or 4 get selected to the Hall.
Up to 3.
Up to 3, so not even
and
3.
Hopefully they select 3.
Maybe they don't even select any. I don't know. So he didn't make the finalists. He's not going to make the Hall of Fame again this year. And for Viking fans, that's disappointing for Jim Marshall, I'm sure. Disappointing for all the teammates who are still alive who played for him, and disappointing for Viking fans who have been longtime Viking fans who have been complaining, crying, wondering why Jim Marshall is not already in the Hall of Fame. And not surprising.
Donnie's telling us he thinks he's blackballed.
He is, but I think maybe that's not the right choice of words. But they obviously don't think much of his. Mm-hmm. They don't feel he's Hall of Fame worthy, or he would have. He retired in 1979. He's still waiting. So
right.
I don't know. But. So I didn't like his chances. A bit surprising, though, was because some of the other guys that didn't get finalists either. Roger Craig, I thought would have been a finalist and didn't. Randy Gradishar did make the cut, and I think that's a good choice. Gradishar was an outstanding linebacker in his time. Also didn't win a Super Bowl, but he managed to make the finalists. Joe Jacoby, part of the Hogs, I think 2-time Super Bowl winner.
That one surprised me the most. If anybody out of your list I expected to make it was Joe Jacoby.
Not in there. Everson Walls did make it, but some other. So some interesting names. Yeah, that's right. Interesting names there. The one that really sticks out for me in the list previous was Joe Klecko making it as a semifinalist, a finalist. Now it does. I don't think he's going to make the Hall of Fame, but his. If you look at, again, this is just one metric, but we went into, I think you got it up there, but you went into 3 weeks ago, like you had a whole bunch of great charts on Pro Football Reference and how they rank players and their value, the adjusted value. And Joe Klecko's was way, way down amongst the semifinalists, way down.
The finalists in this list are in gold.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
With black lettering. And if you look at the bottom of the list is Joe Klecko.
And Klecko, so that's kind of a dubious selection to me. And Klecko played a similar position to Jim Marshall. He played defensive tackle, but he also played some defensive end. Didn't play half as long in his career. He made 4 Pro Bowls as opposed to 2 of Jim Marshall's. But I think the resume is, you could make an argument for Klecko, I guess, being a finalist. You could also make an argument for Jim Marshall being a finalist. I don't think Klecko's was a strong candidate. However, again, much like Everson Walls, and he's a Cowboy.
He was a member of the Green Machine, right?
That's right.
And
the Green Machine.
He was
in New York. He was in New York. He was a member of the New York Sack Exchange.
Exchange, yes.
And he played against some.
Jim Marshall was a member of the Purple People Eaters.
Yeah, I know.
And I'd put up the Purple People Eaters against the Sack Exchange any day of the week.
And if you look at some of the AV values, again, of Everson Walls, Ken Riley, who was a great cornerback for the Cincinnati Bengals, their AV values is not pretty much the same as Jim Marshall's, yet they got in. So I don't know. I just kind of feel that, like I said before, I am not very – for Marshall not even to get into as a finalist in the seniors category means I think his chances of getting in the actual Hall of Fame are close to nil, the way things are going. And it's just very, very unfortunate. Nobody seems to recognize that the value that Jim Marshall brought to the Vikings, what an incredible player he was, durable player, and what an incredible teammate and leader he was. That's got to count for a lot.
The original Iron Man. Right? Yeah. Nobody had done that before him. That alone should be a mark that puts him ahead. But like I said before, it comes down to who presents the argument, right? It's usually a beat writer, and the beat writers go in front of the other beat writers who are on the committee and then advocate. I don't know who's advocating for Jim Marshall, but it needs to be somebody else. Because whoever isn't doing a good enough job.
And I think that, again, the problem that the advocate might have is that, again, like you said, those lack of Pro Bowls and individual honors compared to some of the other guys maybe. But also when we talked about Jim Marshall's candidacy 3 weeks ago, I said, well, one of the things that might be hurting him is that, again, he retired in 1979. Every year there's new candidates that come up that some of these beat writers may have never seen Jim Marshall play. They might not have even been born when he was playing. But they'll have a better memory of guys like Roger Craig and whoever the new guys who are eligible next year. And so the memory of the memory of Jim Marshall, the player, of who he was, what he did on the field, the type of individual and character he was, goes further and further down. But the only thing that makes me a little bit gives me hope for the next few years is that some of the guys that were finalists, like Chuck Halley, got in, played the same, actually a little bit earlier than Marshall. He got in as a finalist. So Maxie Bond's another guy. And then I'm looking at the other, Tommy Nobis was another guy. So those guys kind of played the same era as Jim Marshall. They got in. So it's not a done deal that Marshall's age is working against him now, that people will forget about him and what he did. But it just doesn't look good for him. And I don't know what needs to be done. Maybe not that we don't have 11,000 subscribers like Drew and Ted's show, but if I could ask Viking fans anything here in the next year or so, if you want to see Jim Marshall get in, we need to put together some kick-ass letter writing campaign to the Hall of Fame or something, like they do for like voting for the All-Star game or something. Right to the Hall of Fame. The Vikings need to start like a campaign for Jim Marshall for the Hall of Fame. Try to get every possible Viking fan they can to write in and talk about why Jim Marshall should be in the Hall of Fame. Send it to the Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, and maybe that will be what gets him over the edge. I don't know, because I don't see
when the Hall of Fame committee member goes to the voting block and says, hey, we've got these 3 million emails that says he needs to be in there.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It'll really cheese me off though if Jim Marshall, and I hope this doesn't happen for a while, but Jim Marshall is like 84 now, something like that. It'll really cheese me off if he passes away and then the Hall of Fame decides, he's dead. Let's put him in now. Yeah, too late. Like, put him in while he's alive. Put him in like he should be in.
You got
Jim Marshall. Jim Marshall needs to be in there, and he should be in there. And I don't want him to go in as kind of a sympathy pick after he's deceased.
Right.
Let's
do the right thing. The whole Purple People leaders should be in there. I agree.
Hey, Gary Larson, another guy, very underrated and underappreciated, even by somebody like me. And I don't tend to talk about, I'll talk about Eller, I'll talk about Marshall, I'll talk about Alan Page. I don't talk really a whole lot about Gary Larson, but he was a key member of the Purple People leaders.
Yep. But Jim Marshall, or Jim should be in there. And it's just a freaking shame. Today and yesterday, it was announced that Jared Allen is going to be inducted into the Vikings Hall of Fame. Ring of Honor. He should be. Absolutely should be. And we talk about, he gave an interview today, or yesterday. It was today, I think. And he talked about who is every team has a cadre of the legends that sort of grow. Vikings has one of the best ones. And who was the first one to meet him and talk to him when he joined the team way back in 2008?
It's 2008. 2008.
It was Jim Marshall. And how much he thought of Jim Marshall. Right? And that's just it. It hits you right there. And he talks all of them, Eller, Page, but it was Jim Marshall was the one that first came up to him. Now he joins them in the Ring of Honor this season. I don't know which game they're going to announce it, but it's going to be fun. We definitely got to watch
It's the Arizona game that he's getting announced.
Okay. And I do hope that he gets put up next to Kevin Williams so that they can be side by side for, basically eternity until, the Vikings are no more. Those guys were brilliant together. Jared Allen brings me a whole bunch of satisfaction personally and for the team. The whole sacks, the chasing the quarterbacks out of the end zones for safeties, the slide and calf rope boop, deal, as a celebration. The way he absolutely worked to get to the quarterback and the happiness and the gregarious. He was gregarious.
Gregarious, yeah.
Yep.
Gregarious.
Too much bourbon so far. Anyways, that he held. The mullet, when he came in the Fu Manchu, right? The whole works. He was fabulous as a guy. I think he was great. His quickness off the ball, his power. He'd go after that quarterback. Drew says, a hell of a player. I am so happy that he makes it. What are your thoughts?
Echo everything you said 100%. David, Jared Allen was a guy that as soon as he got traded to the Vikings, it was just a perfect fit for Allen and for the Vikings. And that was one of those trades where Jared Allen gave the Vikings exactly what they were expecting when they got him and what fans were expecting where they got him. Was a guy who was a terror chasing after the quarterback, one of the best to ever do it in the game, certainly one of the best to ever do it with the Vikings. And it was just fun watching Jared Allen play football. That he was like the defensive kind of Brett Favre, just having fun out there, man. And I think that's a big reason one of the reasons for his success was just how much he enjoyed playing and how hard he played. Yeah, he had a lot of great physical traits as well, but lots of guys have those. But he also just had a motor that was just never stopped, and he never quit on plays. Well, particularly on when he was sacking the quarterback, running run defense. Jarrett wasn't always as good at that, but anyway, we weren't in there for him to be Pat Williams. We were in there for him to be Jared Allen, and he was. So awesome player. Thrilled that he's making the Ring of Honor. Well deserved, like you say, and we won't see another guy like Jared Allen, I don't think, for quite a while. But
today he said we expect fully Jared Allen to be inducted in the Hall of Fame in the next couple of years. He has that season. We went back. Let's show when we talked about where is it? The Hall of Fame rankings. I put the three on the bottom are for reference that aren't there yet. Jared Allen, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's got, according to their metrics, 70.15 of normal, 104. He's 22nd on the in the ranking. I expect him to get there. I expect within the next 2 years we will see Jared Allen, Hall of Fame, be inducted into the Hall of Fame. We might get the Hall of Fame game that year, and hey, hopefully Jared Allen and Jim Marshall together. But yeah, I'd be all for that. But that would mean Jared Allen would be 2024 at minimum. I'd like to see him in 2023. But he is he should make it into the Hall of Fame. I do hope he does. You can see he's higher than Jim Marshall by far on that, and he deserves it. And I'm happy he's getting the honors he is.
Yep, it'll be. Let's hope that when he is there to get inducted into the Ring of Honor, that the Vikings win the game for him, because
think that hasn't been the case recently with the Ring of Honor ceremonies, but maybe I'm just imagining that. But Vikings win that game for Allen when he's there, getting into the Ring of Honor too, just to cap off a good day.
I loved when in his presser, right, and he's meeting a lot of the guys he knew, some of the older press guys, right, and he was asked, well, what did you tell the team? And that's, if you haven't seen it, it's up on the Vikings website where he talks to the team about family and all, playing for each other and stuff like that. But they asked him, what did you say to the players? And he's got the press in front of him and leans on the podium and he says, don't suck.
Yeah.
That should be the theme of the year. Don't suck. And and he laughed and they laughed, but it's true. It's 100% true. And he in his life didn't suck. He was good. So I hope, I look forward to being inducted, and I hope his selection to the Hall of Fame comes sooner than later. Unlike Jim Marshall, which has come later and is still going on later. He better make it in. Hall of Fame voters. Take it from me. That's it. That's the show today.
That's it. That's all.
That's all, folks. We appreciate everybody that's joined us. Donnie, Seawise, Purple Haze, Drewster, Nick, Brian, Aaron, you're down here with me in Austin, and yeah, it's a little warm today. It's a little toasty. That's why I'm doing my bourbon. Enjoying that. Nick, let's see, who else did I miss? We don't see Mary. Unfortunately, Mary's recovering from some surgery. She will recover. She's having a hard time with that, but we wish her well. Hope it goes well in the rehab and everything. She's back on her feet shortly. Appreciate you joining us on a Saturday afternoon. And for the rest of this upcoming week, we have Tyler Fornes and the Real Forno on Monday. I suspect he'll be talking a little bit about the Kirk Cousins thing, plus more. We'll find out. We'll see. He's still waiting on his credentials from the Vikings so he can be out there every day. He is now 100% a full-time sports writer. And if you don't know, he has his own Substack. If you're willing to subscribe, pay a good, it's a $60 for a year. That's $5 a month to read some outstanding stuff. And it's not just Vikings football. It's across multiple sports. You will benefit tremendously. Tuesday, we're going to have Flip and Eric Thompson. Great Flip Maze and Eric Thompson with Viking hot takes on its new day, Tuesday. Wednesday, we're having Vikings happy hour. Matt and Ryan are welcoming a guest that that's been on before. That is controversial. You'll have to wait till Wednesday to see who it is, but I know it. You can put Doctor in front of his name. That might help you figure it out. As for Thursday and Friday, we don't know yet. We do have a new show lined up, and one of our podcasts is coming live onto the channel as well. And then you get Darren and I back again next Saturday. We'll probably talk about the Hall of Fame game, which I'm sure is going to be a yawner because it's the Hall of Fame game, and what's happening in the Vikings as we work up to preseason game week 1 for us. Should be fun. Any last words there, Darren?
No, sir, David. Just, again, thanks to everybody who watched, chatted, put in a comment. I appreciate your patronage. Yeah. Great having you guys on and great talking the Vikings on a Saturday afternoon.
Absolutely. To all of you, what do we say?
We say, Skol Vikings, baby!
Skol Vikings! Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite aggregator. And a special shout out goes to our partners, The Daily Norseman, where the best Vikings content can be found, and to Lake Monster Brewing, home of the best beer in Minnesota. Skol, everybody.